Alright, let's talk about something you don't hear about every day. A potential gold war. No, not those little plastic figurines you win at carnivals. I'm talking about actual, shiny precious metal gold. Specifically, the potential for the US and China to use it as a weapon in their ongoing geopolitical tussle. Look, we all know these two are already locked in a trade war, tech war, basically a war on whose turn it is to buy the office donuts, but things could get a whole lot more sparkly if gold gets dragged into the mix. The US has some pretty potent options at its disposal, and China, well, they're not exactly slouches in the gold department either, so buckle up, Buttercup. Because we're about to dive headfirst into the shimmering, potentially volatile world of a US-China gold war. One of the most aggressive moves the US could pull is to essentially freeze China out of its own gold reserves held overseas. Think about that for a second. Imagine going to your bank asking for your own money and being told, "Sorry, Uncle Sam said no." Now, a big chunk of China's gold is sitting pretty in vaults in places like London and New York. The US could pressure these financial hubs to block China's access. It would be messy, sure, but it would also be a huge blow to China's gold liquidity. They'd be forced to rely on whatever they've got stashed away domestically, or maybe in Switzerland if the Swiss are feeling neutral about economic warfare that day. Of course, this could backfire spectacularly. It could send shockwaves through the global financial system, force other countries to think twice about where they park their gold, and potentially accelerate the move away from the US dollar. But hey, who doesn't love a little global economic instability, right? If freezing assets sounds a bit too passive-aggressive, the US could always go after China's gold miners and refiners directly. We're talking about slapping sanctions on major players like Zijin Mining or ICBC, making it near impossible for them to do business in dollars. This would be like kicking sand in the face of China's gold ambitions. They'd struggle to export their gold, trade it internationally, basically anything that involves, participating in the global economy. Naturally, this could lead to some creative workarounds. We're talking black markets, backroom deals, maybe even a resurgence of those gold teeth rappers used to love so much. But here's the kicker. China wouldn't just sit there and take it. Oh no, they'd retaliate, and hard. Think restrictions on rare earth metals, export bans on tech, basically anything they can do to make the US economy cry uncle. Chapter 3. Delisting Chinese gold, when good bars go bad. Let's say the US wants to play the long game, really stick it to China in a way that's both devious and boring. Well, they could try to convince the LBMA, the Fancy Pants London Bullion Market Association, to delist Chinese gold bars. Essentially, this would make Chinese gold the financial equivalent of that weird-smelling cheese you find at the back of the fridge. Technically edible, but no one wants to touch it. Chinese gold would become near impossible to trade in Western markets, decimating its liquidity and forcing China to rely on its own internal market. This could lead to a bizarre situation where you have two different gold prices, one for the good Western gold and another for the suspect Chinese stuff. Imagine a world where your gold bar is suddenly worth less just because of where it was refined. It's enough to make you want to melt the damn thing down, and, well, I probably shouldn't give them any ideas. Chapter 4. The nuclear option, a gold-backed dollar. Now, for the option that's both completely insane and strangely compelling, the US could hint at, whisper about, maybe even about returning to a gold-backed dollar. I know what you're thinking. Didn't Nixon kill that back in the 70s? He did, but desperate times call for potentially disastrous measures. Even the suggestion of a gold-backed dollar could send shockwaves through the global financial system. The dollar would surge as people rushed to buy into this newly stable asset, completely undermining China's own gold-backed Yuan ambitions. Of course, this is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. The Fed would lose a ton of its monetary flexibility, inflation could run rampant, or we could swing the other way and end up in a deflationary spiral. It would be chaos, but hey, at least it would be gold-plated chaos. Chapter 5. Gold Swift. The financial equivalent of a VIP section in a nightclub. Finally, if the US really wants to throw a gold-plated wrench into the gears of the global economy, they could create their own gold clearing system. Think of it as a Gold Swift, a VIP club for gold trading that only allows in the US and its closest allies. China would be left out in the cold, forced to rely on alternative systems like maybe a BRICS-led system or some sort of shadowy gold market where everyone wears fedoras and speaks in hushed tones. This would effectively split the global gold market in two, with the US and its allies on one side and China and, well, whoever's left on the other. It would be a messy divorce, with each side trying to lure in other countries to their side. Think of it as the financial equivalent of your parents fighting over who gets custody of you after they split up. Except instead of arguing over who gets the dog, they're arguing over who gets to control the global gold trade. The golden endgame, who blinks first? So there you have it. 5 ways the US could weaponize gold against China. Will any of these actually happen? Who knows? Honestly, it's probably best if they don't. The global financial system is already about as stable as a drunk giraffe on roller skates. Injecting a gold war into the mix would just make things infinitely more complicated and unpredictable. But hey, that's the world we live in now, isn't it? A world where shiny rocks dug up from the ground somehow dictate the fate of nations. Makes you want to go out and buy a gold bar, doesn't it? Or maybe just invest in a really good therapist.